off me! I didn't do anything! You've got the wrong man! Let go!
5 years had dissolved since that fateful Christmas night on the freezing bench of Madison Avenue, and to the outside world, Andrew Sterling's life was a masterclass in redemption. The skyline of New York was no longer just a backdrop for his corporate empire. It was the canvas upon which he and Jennifer had painted a life of philanthropy and genuine connection. Yet, as the snow began to drift across the city on this particular Christmas Eve, the warmth that usually filled the Sterling penthouse was suffocated by a chilling tension that had been brewing for months. The air inside the apartment, usually redolent with pine and cinnamon, felt sterile, charged with the static of unspoken fears. Andrew stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the Central Park treeline, but he wasn't seeing the festive lights. He was watching the reflection of a man who felt the ground beneath him turning into quicksand. Sterling Innovations, the behemoth he had built, was bleeding. Not money, but trust. Someone was leaking confidential schematics to a rival firm in London, and the forensic accountants had traced the digital footprint right back to Andrew's private server. It was a frame-up, meticulous and cruel, designed not just to bankrupt him, but to destroy the reputation he had painstakingly rebuilt. Behind him, the sound of a porcelain cup clinking against a saucer shattered the silence. Jennifer was sitting on the edge of the velvet sofa, her face pale, the vibrancy that Andrew loved so dearly drained away by a week of sleepless nights. She wasn't worried about the money. She was worried about the car that had been parked across the street from Charlie's school for 3 days straight. A black saloon, windows tinted, engine idling like a sleeping beast. "They're watching him, Andrew," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and maternal rage. "I know that car. I saw it yesterday when I took Charlie to his piano lesson. And when I turned around, it was gone. It's not the press. The press are vultures, but they're noisy. This is." "Predatory." Andrew turned, his jaw set in a hard line, the muscles in his neck taut. "I've doubled the security detail, Jen. No one gets near Charlie, I promise you." But promises felt like fragile glass in a room full of hammers. He walked over to her, kneeling to take her cold hands in his, but for the first time in 5 years, she flinched. The reaction was subtle, a microscopic recoil, but to Andrew it felt like a gunshot. "What is it?" he asked, his voice low. Jennifer looked away, her eyes swimming with tears she refused to shed. "I found something, Andrew, in your study. I wasn't prying, I was looking for a pen, and I saw the file on the desk. The one marked Project Lazarus." Andrew's blood ran cold. Project Lazarus wasn't a business deal. It was a contingency plan he had drafted years ago, a darker, colder strategy to liquidate the Foundation's assets in case of a total market collapse, a strategy that would leave thousands of families without support to save the core company. He had abandoned it years ago, or so he thought. "That's an old file, Jen. It means nothing." "It was dated last week," she countered, her voice rising. "It had your signature on it. It authorizes the sale of the homeless shelters we built, the ones that saved people like me. Are you selling us out, Andrew? Is this whole man of the people act finally over?" The accusation hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Before Andrew could defend himself, before he could explain that his digital signature must have been forged along with the data leaks, the heavy oak doors of the penthouse burst open. It wasn't the police. It wasn't security. It was his personal assistant, Marcus, a man Andrew had trusted with his life, a man who had stood by him during the transition from ruthless CEO to philanthropist. Marcus looked disheveled, his usually pristine suit rumpled, sweat beading on his forehead despite the winter chill. "Andrew, you need to leave." "Now," Marcus gasped, leaning against the doorframe. "The board! They've called an emergency vote. They're invoking the morality clause. They're claiming you're mentally unstable, that you're hallucinating threats to justify liquidating assets. They're coming for you, and they've got the police. They're saying you embezzled the shelter funds." Andrew stood up, his mind racing. "That's insanity. I built those shelters with my own money." "They have bank transfers, Andrew," Marcus said, his eyes darting to Jennifer. "Transfers from the Foundation to an offshore account in Jennifer's name." The room spun. Andrew looked at Jennifer, whose shock was absolute and terrifyingly genuine. "What?" she breathed. "I don't even have a passport." "They're framing both of you," Marcus urged, checking his watch. "But that's not the worst part. The person leading the vote, the person orchestrating this hostile takeover, it isn't a competitor. Andrew felt a sickness rising in his throat, a primal instinct warning him of the knife already in his back. "Who is it, Marcus?" The answer came not from Marcus, but from the open doorway behind him. The click of high heels on the marble floor was sharp, rhythmic, and deadly precise. A woman stepped into the light of the foyer, shaking snow from a cashmere coat that cost more than the original Sterling apartment. She had Andrew's eyes, steel gray and unyielding, but her smile was a slash of crimson cruelty. It was Eleanor, his sister. The one who had lived in London, the one who had cut him off years ago because he worked too much, or so she had claimed. She looked at the opulent room with a sneer of distaste, her gaze landing on Jennifer with the cold assessment of an exterminator viewing a pest. "Hello, brother," Eleanor purred, her British accent clipped and polished. "It's been a long time. You really should check your emails more often. I've been trying to reach you about the acquisition." Andrew stepped in front of Jennifer, shielding her. "Eleanor, what are you doing here? You haven't spoken to me in a decade." "I've been busy," she said, walking further into the room, flanked by two men who looked less like lawyers and more like mercenaries. "Busy cleaning up the mess you've made of the family legacy, turning a tech empire into a charity ward, marrying a stray." She gestured vaguely at Jennifer. "Father would be turning in his grave. I'm taking back the company, Andrew. And I'm doing it with the full support of the shareholders. They prefer profit over sob stories." "You forged the signatures," Andrew realized, the horror dawning on him. "You set up the accounts in Jennifer's name. You're the one who leaked the schematics." Eleanor laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "I merely facilitated the inevitable. You were weak, Andrew. You let sentimentality rot your brain. But don't worry, I'm not heartless. I've arranged for a severance package. Prison, I believe. Offers 3 meals a day. You should be used to handouts by now, shouldn't you, Jennifer?" The cruelty of the remark sparked a fire in Andrew. He lunged forward, but the two men stepped in, blocking his path with brutal efficiency. "Don't!" one of them grunted, his hand resting on a bulge inside his jacket that was unmistakably a weapon. "Andrew, stop!" Jennifer cried out, grabbing his arm. "Think about Charlie." At the mention of the boy's name, Eleanor's expression shifted from arrogance to something far more sinister, amusement. "Ah, yes, the boy, the little mascot of your redemption tour." She checked her diamond-encrusted watch. "He should be finishing his history exam right about now, shouldn't he? It's a pity. Traffic in New York is so unpredictable on Christmas Eve. One never knows who might pick a child up from school if the parents are incapacitated." The blood drained from Jennifer's face so violently she nearly collapsed. "Where is he? Where is my son?" Andrew roared. "Eleanor, if you touch him, I will kill you." Eleanor merely tutted. "So dramatic, I haven't touched him, but I did make a phone call. Do you remember Liam, Jennifer's old flame, the one who ran off? Turns out £100,000 is quite a compelling reason to suddenly remember one has rights as a father. He picked Charlie up 20 minutes ago." The world fractured. The corporate sabotage, the embezzlement, the prison threat, it all faded into background noise. Charlie was gone, taken by the man who had abandoned him, paid for by the woman who shared Andrew's blood. Jennifer let out a sound that wasn't a scream but a guttural sob of pure terror, dropping to her knees. Andrew looked at his sister, really looked at her, and saw not a sibling, but a monster grown in the petri dish of the very greed he had tried to escape. "You crossed the line, Eleanor," Andrew said, his voice deadly quiet, vibrating with a cold fury that terrified even the hired muscle. "You think you've won because you have the board and the money, but you forgot one thing. You forgot who I was before I was nice." He turned to Marcus. "Get the car, the other car." Marcus's eyes widened, realizing Andrew meant the unregistered vehicle, the one kept for emergencies that didn't involve the police. "Andrew, you can't." "Get the car." Andrew bellowed, the sound echoing off the glass walls. He turned to Jennifer, pulling her up, gripping her shoulders. "Listen to me. We are going to get him back. I don't care about the company. I don't care about the money. I will burn this entire city to the ground if I have to, but I will bring him home." Eleanor looked bored. "You have an hour before the police arrive to arrest you for corporate fraud. I'd suggest you use it wisely. Though Liam is planning to take the boy to Ireland. No extradition for custody disputes is messy, isn't it?" Andrew didn't waste another second on her. He grabbed Jennifer's hand and they ran, not to the elevator, but to the service stairs, bursting out into the freezing stairwell. They descended 28 flights of stairs, the adrenaline masking the burn in their lungs. When they burst out into the alleyway, the cold air hit them like a physical blow. The snow was falling harder now, blinding and thick. Marcus pulled up in a nondescript gray sedan, the tires screeching on the ice. "I tracked Jennifer's phone," Marcus shouted over the engine as they piled in. "She put an air tag in Charlie's backpack last week when the black car started showing up." Andrew looked at Jennifer, a surge of admiration mixing with his fear. "You did. I was scared," she wept, clutching her phone, watching the little blue dot moving rapidly towards JFK Airport. "He's on the Van Wyck Expressway. They're going to the airport." Andrew slammed his fist against the dashboard. "Step on it, Marcus." The chase that followed was a blur of red taillights and blaring horns. The city was gridlocked with holiday traffic, a sea of metal and frustration. Andrew's mind was a tactical war room. He called in favors he hadn't used in a decade, contacting a private security contractor he used to drink with, a man who operated in the gray areas of the law. "Block the entrance to Terminal 4, Andrew barked into the phone. "I don't care how, crash a truck, start a fire, just stop traffic." Beside him, Jennifer was rocking back and forth, praying in a whisper. "He doesn't know him, Andrew. Charlie doesn't know him. He'll be so scared." "He's brave, Jen. He's the bravest kid I know. He's going to be okay." But Andrew's own heart was hammering a rhythm of pure panic. They were losing time. The blue dot was nearing the terminal. "They're at the departure's drop-off," Marcus yelled, swerving onto the shoulder to bypass a stalled bus. "We're 5 minutes out." "We're not going to make it," Andrew said, looking at the traffic snarl ahead. He made a decision. "Stop the car." "What?" Marcus cried. "Stop the damn car." Andrew threw the door open before the vehicle had fully halted. He jumped out into the slush, the freezing wind tearing at his suit. "Andrew," Jennifer screamed. "Run," he shouted back at her. "Marcus, get her there." "I'm taking the shortcut." Andrew Sterling, the billionaire, the man on the cover of Fortune, vaulted over the concrete barrier and began to sprint across the active lanes of the highway. Horns blared, tires screeched, and a taxi missed him by inches, spraying him with filthy slush. He didn't flinch. He ran with the desperation of a man who had finally found something worth dying for. He scrambled up the embankment toward the air train tracks, ignoring the signs warning of high voltage. He needed to cut across the loop. He could see the terminal building glowing in the distance, a beacon of separation. He reached the perimeter fence, scaling the chain link with torn fingers, ruining his expensive suit, tearing his skin. He dropped to the tarmac on the other side, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He spotted the entrance to Terminal 4. He ran, his lungs burning, his vision blurring. He burst through the automatic doors, the heat of the terminal hitting him. The crowd was immense, a sea of holiday travelers. "Charlie!" he screamed, ignoring the stares. "Charlie!" He scanned the crowd, looking for the red backpack, the curly hair. And then he saw them, near the check-in counter for the London flight. A man in a leather jacket, Liam, was dragging a small boy by the wrist. Charlie was fighting, digging his heels in, his face red with screaming, though the sound was swallowed by the airport noise. Liam raised his hand, looking ready to strike the child. The rage that exploded in Andrew was nuclear. He didn't think, he became a projectile. He plowed through the security line, knocking over a barrier. "Get your hands off him!" Andrew's voice was a thunderclap that silenced the immediate area. Liam turned, his eyes widening in recognition and fear. He let go of Charlie's hand to reach for something in his pocket, perhaps a weapon, perhaps a fake passport. Andrew didn't give him the chance. He tackled Liam to the hard terrazzo floor, the momentum sending them both skidding into a luggage cart. Andrew's fist connected with Liam's jaw once, twice, a release of 5 years of protective instinct. "Andrew!" The small voice cut through the red haze. Andrew froze, his fist raised. He looked up. Charlie was standing there, trembling, tears streaming down his face. Andrew rolled off the unconscious Liam and scrambled to his knees, opening his arms. Charlie slammed into him, burying his face in Andrew's chest. "He said you didn't want me anymore," Charlie sobbed. "He said you sold us." "Never," Andrew choked out, holding the boy so tight his own ribs ached. "I would never, ever let you go." Security guards were swarming now, shouting commands. Jennifer came running through the crowd, breathless, her hair wild, sliding onto the floor to wrap her arms around both of them. For a moment, they were an island of broken, beautiful humanity in the middle of chaos. But the victory was short-lived. As the airport police pulled Andrew up, handcuffing him for the assault, he saw a news report playing on the giant screens above the check-in counters. Breaking news. Sterling Innovations CEO sought for fraud. Board appoints Eleanor Sterling as interim CEO. The picture on the screen was Andrew's mugshot from a minor arrest 20 years ago, making him look like a criminal. He looked at Jennifer. She had Charlie. They were safe from Liam, but the war had just begun. As the officers led Andrew away, he looked back at his wife and son. "Go to the safe house," he mouthed. "Trust no one." Jennifer nodded, her eyes hardening. She wasn't the scared woman at the bus stop anymore. She was a mother who had almost lost her child, and she was the wife of a man who had just sacrificed everything for them. She watched them drag Andrew away, and then she looked directly into the lens of a bystander's phone recording the incident. She stood tall, wiped the tears from her face, and took Charlie's hand. Eleanor thought she had won. She thought she had stripped Andrew of his power, but she had forgotten that Andrew Sterling's power didn't come from his bank account anymore. It came from the two people standing in the terminal, watching him leave. And as Jennifer walked Charlie toward the exit, ignoring the police questions, her hand brushed the pocket of her coat where she had hidden the flash drive Marcus had slipped her in the car, the real backup of the company's servers. The evidence that would bury Eleanor. The game wasn't over. It had simply changed players. And this time they weren't fighting for money. They were fighting for their lives. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, don't let the journey end here. Subscribe now to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next heart-pounding episode. What is on the flash drive? Will Andrew survive prison? Can Jennifer take down Eleanor before the assassins catch up to her? Drop a comment below with your theory, Team Sterling or the Betrayal. Share this video with a friend who loves a good thriller. Let's get this story to 10,000 likes to unlock the next chapter immediately. The revolution has begun. Join us.